I love Back to the Future. It's one of the best trilogies ever made, and I'll take no argument. And I particularly love how tight-knit it all is, how really well plotted the time travel is. The attention to detail is amazing, but the details also include a ton of Easter eggs. So let's get stuck into every Back to the Future Easter egg. Back to the Future's lovely opening shot of Doc's clocks includes a really witty Easter egg. That's a real merchandise tie-in to the film Safety Last, the classic comedy by Harold Lloyd, which foreshadows what will happen to Doc at the finale. Sadly, Harold and Christopher aren't related, otherwise that would make this an awesomely layered reference. Next up is a great reference to Stanley Kubrick's favourite Easter egg. The amp says CRM-114, which first appeared on screen in Doctor Strangelove. In the audition scene, Marty's band are playing The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News. The band is the News.
Hold it, fellas. I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
And that's Huey Lewis. Look closely and you can see the green car's license plate says For Mary. This is a nod to Mary Radford, the PA to Frank Marshall, the second unit director and executive producer. In the background you can see the cinema is showing Orgy American Style. This is an actual film from 1973 which starred Buck Flower, who plays the bum in the first two films. When Marty arrives in 1955, he's on Farmer Peabody's land. You can see it on the mailbox. Peabody's son is called Sherman, a sweet reference to the Bullwinkle show's time-travelling duo Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Again, the cinema has a little treat for us. Cattle Queen of Montana is a real film from 1954 which stars a certain Ronald Reagan, setting up this joke.
Who's President of the United States in 1985?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan? The actor?
Ron Woodward was actually the key grip on the film. I don't know if he was class president in 1955. Obviously, Marty makes Star Wars and Star Trek references when he's frightening George, but the real treat is the music on the tape is actually by Eddie Van Halen.
Excellent!
You've noticed this before, but famously we can see Marty's changed Hill Valley history by the name of the mall. It was the Twin Pines Mall, but after Marty's, accident, it's the Lone Pine Mall. But did you also notice the clock tower's masonry is now broken? Clever, that. On to Back to the Future Part 2 now, and in 2015, Hill Valley's welcome sign says the mayor is Goldie Wilson Jr., son of the original. And Goldie Wilson III has a hover conversion company. They come a long way from sweeping diners.
You can start by sweeping the floor.
Jaws 19 is a joke at the expense of Steven Spielberg's mega blockbuster, whose third sequel came out 2 years before Back to the Future Part 2. Max Spielberg really is the name of Steven's son, but he hasn't become a director. Luckily, there were no more Jaws films either. That old geezer is Charles Fleischer, the voice of Roger Rabbit in director Robert Zemeckis' 1988 classic. And you can see a talking Roger Rabbit doll in the antique shop. It also has Marty's jacket from the first film at the top, and a Ronald Reagan vinyl, because Reagan.
Show you, kid.
Elijah Wood!
I'm a crack shot at this.
He wasn't remotely famous yet, so it's not an Easter egg, but it's still a cool bit of trivia.
Use your hands? That's like a baby's toy.
Of course, the video game is a little bit of foreshadowing for the third film in general, cowboys and guns, but specifically it's referenced in the shooting gallery scene.
Hey, just tell me one thing. Where did you learn to shoot like this?
7-Eleven.
Cafe 80's digital celebrity waiters are a big Max Headroom reference. Yeah, you know who he is. And there are lots of 80s TV shows like Oprah, Miami Vice, Family Ties in the background. The cyclists are a reference to the fact it was a gym in the first film. There are some interesting but wrong predictions about the future on the USA Today paper, like the president saying she's tired and Queen Diana visiting Washington. Not only did Diana divorce Prince Charles and then die in a car accident, he's not even king yet. Doc's shirt has trains and cowboys on it. I like to think this is a bit of foreshadowing of Part 3. That's Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers as Needles. He also appears in Part 3. And in this line of dialogue, Doc predicts the plot of Part 3.
The Old West, the time traveling is just too dangerous. Better that I devote myself to studying the other great mystery of the universe. Women.
Blink and you'll miss it, but Biff's shenanigans have been recorded by the DeLorean. Biff's pleasure paradise is actually the clock tower, but the clock's been removed. Symbolic. Smoking is required in the Biff Tannen Museum. And there's another brief hint at what Part 3 is about with a glimpse of Mad Dog Tannen on the TV. This is actually an early costume test, which is why he looks different in the final film. But more importantly, Biff nailed Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield. Both of them are legendary Hollywood sex symbols who died tragically young in their mid-30s. What the hell did Biff do? And from the newspaper, it looks like Biff also kept Nixon in the White House, and he's running for a 5th term, and the Vietnam War is still underway. Man, alternate 1985 is shit. Biff is watching A Fistful of Dollars, which will inspire Marty's secret identity and clever gunfight trick in Part 3. And another brief hint at what's about to happen. Oh, these films are genius. The props and set decoration in Doc's garage are exactly the same as in the first film. Even the burnt car is the same. Look at the posters and you can see Revenge of the Creature and Tarantula. They're both movies that came out in 1955 and were Clint Eastwood's first acting roles. Clint's first credited role, Francis in the Navy, is on the billboard in the background. And Doc's dialogue in this scene is a double reference to the first film. First, to Marty's arrival in 1955.
You don't want to crash into some tree that once existed in the past.
And secondly, to the end scene, or the beginning of Part 2.
Remember where you're going, there are no roads.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
The Jones manure handlers have appeared in each film, shoveling crap for generations. The whole of Part 3 is a love letter to westerns. Monument Valley is the location for many of the greatest westerns, and Dub Taylor, Harry Carey Jr. and Pat Buttram are all classic actors from Hollywood and TV westerns. Doc rescues Marty the same way Blondie rescues Tuco in The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And in the background of these shots you can see the brand new clock for the clock tower being delivered, as well as Clara on the platform. And yes, that is ZZ Top as the band.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Taxi Driver and Sudden Impact reference. In the saloon, the barbed wire salesman looks an awful lot like Joseph Glidden, the man who patented barbed wire in real life. Although by 1885 he was mega rich and was a proper businessman, not just a peddler. Marty's KO of Mad Dog is the same as George's KO of Biff in the first film. Look closely and you can see Doc's neckerchief is actually made of the same shirt he wore in Part 2. Eastwood Ravine! See what you did there? Like the Twin Pines Mall in the first film, it's clear that Doc and Marty's antics have changed the future. The ravine was named Clayton Ravine after Clara died there, but now it's Eastwood Ravine after Marty's fake identity. Doc must have told everyone that he went down with the train. And finally, there are more trilogy-capping echoes of shots from the first film. The spinning license plate and the time machine